So good morning, everyone. Welcome to Satsang. Let's make some silence first. Where am I heading? What is my real goal? Am I aligning all my steps according to my real goal? Which steps are being given? Do they point to where I really want to go? So once again, good morning, everyone. Welcome. Just reminding you that we use WhatsApp as a means of communication. You can send your questions, they come directly to me. The number appears on the comments. So let's talk about the divine path. Walking the divine path. What does that mean? The right attitude, the right alignment in work, how to make sure that your tomorrow fits the direction that you're envisioning as for the highest. Because those who are seeking liberation, they have this tendency, knowingly, unknowingly, to separate the spiritual quest from the worldly doings, and they have no separation. But if you keep this separation, you'll be feeding two directions simultaneously. Then problems will come. So if you want to start in the serious manner, you will have to pay attention to the slightest details. Everything counts. So it's like you have a task to complete. You have to shift a big pile, an enormous pile of boxes of different shapes and sizes and weights, and you have to shift them from one place to another place. And to do it all, even the small boxes are important, not just the big ones and the heavy ones. So, as you are applying yourself into your spiritual quest, into your meditation, intensifying your meditation practices, the rest of the day, your worldly activities, they are a stage where you will affirm these spiritual values or not, or affirm worldly values. And this makes the difference. Some people don't know what to do. They don't understand the practicalities of spiritual work. But you're intensifying your meditation, and at the same time, you should be working at the level of your fears, attachments, everything which connects you, which binds you to worldliness, to the worldly world. And this, for many, is a nuisance. Well, because they don't really understand the value in this. They don't give it importance. It's just a hassle that they don't think it's important enough to deal with. But on the contrary, it is of utmost importance. So as you are seeing in some way that there is attachment, that there are fears there, fears connected to attachment or not, or projections into the future, past, it doesn't matter. As you recognize that they are there, in the moment they are recognized, that recognition has a point. And you are supposed to work on these things the moment you realize them, until there's nothing else there. If you don't, let's get another example for this. So these are like the roots of a big plant, the plant of worldliness, of worldly goals, of the worldly character. If you don't take this, if you don't pluck out this small root, that small root is connected to a bigger root, and they are both growing. And as you are being able to pluck out the small roots, the big roots will become weaker and weaker and weaker by doing so. And what was impossible to pluck out will become possible. But if you ignore them, they will continue to grow and to feed the bigger roots. And this is very important. So, whatever fears, attachments, no matter how small they are, if they are there, you should attend to them. There's no excuses, no valid ones in the sense that, oh, but this is natural. We can touch this because, well, it concerns family or something like this. No, there's no such thing. There is fear and absence of fear. And fear is a fragility, a very strong one, that binds you to worldly investments and will drag you down there again if unchecked. No matter how small, if it appears on the radar, you are supposed to take care of it. Because the greedy mind says, oh, let's take care of the big ones. Let's work on the big ones, forget the rest. Well, because the mind feeds on big things, but also on small things. So as it is working, these bigger things ignoring the small ones, it is working with the hope of gaining something. And it continues to feed on the small ones. It is a win-win situation. So it goes. But that's not really a spiritual investment. It just appears to be. As you identify the voice that is calling you towards the quest for truth, you will see that it is coming from a different place than the other voices. And this is a very important part also, probably even more important than the previous one, which is which master to follow. This one or this one? Because the voice that calls towards liberation is the voice from the heart. And then the mind either cooperates with it because it envisions profit, something to be gained from it, or it goes against by envisioning something to lose from it. Usually it goes against. But as maturity comes, as the calling becomes stronger, and it cannot reject it, then it tries to play along to see what can it gain from it, and if possible, to twist it. Its mere presence twists it. Nothing else is needed. So from the early stages, it is very important to know which voice to follow. The voice of the heart doesn't speak often, usually speaks once. Then the mind comes with a lot of problems trying to put that aside, creating problems or strategies or solutions or whatever. So this voice always tries to be in command, in the front, like Okay, so I'll decide to follow the voice of the heart, or I'll decide to go against it. But it's there in the middle. As it is in the middle, identification with this voice will continue. And this can be the door to falling down heavily. The mind should be trained to obey the voice of the heart, to follow it without questioning. And by doing so, all fears which are behind, which are the pillars of the mind, will be shaken. And as they are shaken, to move forward, you will have to leave those fears behind, those beliefs behind. You cannot do both at the same time. Some can. There's always exceptions. And then they have a very different battle ahead. Training the mind to obey, to let go of preferences, desires, whims. It is difficult, but very important. Because if you're training the mind, you're creating a separation from it. You're looking at it as a different entity, a different object. But there's no point in training the mind in one specific moment, then traveling with it in other moments, enjoying its marvelous expressions and seductions and etc. Doesn't work. Mind has to be trained to be a tool, not an identity, a tool. Because if you are giving steps because the mind is agreeing, eventually when it becomes serious, the mind will disagree. And if identification is big, it's not the mind that is disagreeing. You are disagreeing. And it's not just, these are not mental concepts. Because this notion of you, then this distance starts happening. And you start to see it as something different from you. Seeing at all levels, even towards instinct. And as there is agitation arising because of certain steps that are to be given, you can cook the mind in the fire of difficulty because you're not it. And as you have trained the mind in this way and are training the mind in this way, you are tuning to the voice of the heart. But if your spiritual steps depend on what you call reason, depend of the okay of the character by mental concepts, then what is agreeing now will disagree later. Because if this is driving the car, it wants to go somewhere specifically. It's not the unknown. So it's not liberation. It is still part of this character's plans. And he may sacrifice many things along the way with the hope of achieving that. like people do in relationships, for example. They know that the other doesn't correspond, is not corresponding to their own expectations. But as hope is still there, that somewhere, somehow, they will match, as this hope is still there, relationship continues. And as steps are being given, that which aims to gain something starts to lose. Now you lose this, then you lose that, then you lose this, and that, and this, and that, and this, and that. But it's more than that. It is the direction that it is walking. So in a sense, the wrong character is driving, and it is becoming more and more distant from its goals, from its worldly goals. And it starts to become obvious, but hope is still there and keeping it. When that hope starts to shaken, then it falls. And as it is falling, identification hasn't been broken. So you're falling. You're falling. You're having the doubts. You're having these lots of concepts coming in the way, negativities and all of that. Those negativities that push you away from spiritual work, from the quest for liberation, they are not just negativities, they are the life jackets of the worldly character. Because behind all mental structures, all thought patterns, you can observe what is trying to be spared, what conclusions, what the direction that it is pointing. Because thought patterns, they are just like the bubbles in the pot, which is on the stove in the fire. They are coming because of the fire. It's like almost the water wants to jump out of, to run away from the fire. So it wants to jump out of the pot. So these thoughts that arise, this restlessness, negativities and all of that, they are not a central of processing, of understanding, of reasoning. No, this is just about running away. And you can see the thoughts, they are meaningless, but where are they pointing? What is the conclusion? It's more or less like you're having a discussion with someone. Someone is defending one point and you're defending the other. If you want to defend your point of view, you will find arguments that stand for your point of view, and you will reject the other's arguments. You will just try to find the fault in those arguments. And this is different than trying to know which one is better, which one is more correct than the other. Because if you want to know which one is more correct, instead of defending your own, you know the reasons why you think it's best. You will listen to the other that is pointing what is wrong with your point of view, and you will see if it fits, if it can stand that judgment. You will look at things in a different way. So it is the same. You can, well, if you don't do this previous work that I'm talking about, you will not have a choice. Identification will be there at this level. And then, well, many things can happen, and it is a battle of forces, and nobody knows what's going to happen. But if you've done this previous work, you will be able to observe these thought structures, and you'll see that it will become clear where they are pointing. And if your goal is liberation, like in many other contexts, it becomes simple, because whatever works or is working, or even if it's just apparently aligned with liberation, that's a keeper. That which is working against it, that's something to put away. But if you haven't done this work, then you go into a roller coaster, banging your head from one side to the other, and very difficult. Either in one or the other. If you're in the previous one, you must always try to improve this attention to details and whatever fragilities you find at the level of personality. You don't stop working them until they are solved. If you see fears, if you see attachments, if you see greed or jealousy, or all these things that you already know that shouldn't be there, it's not just because you have seen it all your life that makes it normal. If it is rising, it is there. If it is there, it's an obstacle. It's an impurity that it is generating worldly investments. It's not innocent. So you have to work it until it doesn't rise anymore. Until you see that it is solved. And as one is solved, another one will come, and another one, and another one, until there's nothing else there. Because if you jump this stage, eventually you will need it. And when you need it, if you don't have it, well, it will be much more difficult to continue. Life doesn't care much. It doesn't have preferences. It's not the way that you imagine. So take good care of yourself. All the steps that you are giving, they are important. All of them. And even the steps that you are not giving, they are also important. You see, there's many times that you face decisions to make, and you have to decide. And like I said, in other satsangs, you are constantly making decisions. If you are embracing worldly investments in some sort, flirting with them, well, this is making a decision, and this is paving one direction. If you are looking towards the highest values of the quest for liberation, you are paving another direction. But like the saying goes, you cannot serve two masters at the same time. So if you're not paving the way towards liberations with your actions aligned with it, and at the same time cutting your level best, abstracting your level best, resisting your level best, to actions that are contrary, you're still in the worldly quest. So either you are beginning or you have completed some cycles and you find yourself going to the same place. Of course, your mind will be devastated, will be in shock, will be full of negativities. It's not possible, I cannot do it, and all of this. But this is just noise. The noise of survival. It doesn't have any logic. It doesn't have any value. It is the same thought as, oh, but if I do this now, it's unimportant. It has no problem. It will not disturb anything really. So this voice and, oh, it's not possible, I can do it, I'm not good enough for this. It is the same. Just two sides of the same coin. Either by seduction or frustration or whatever, that character wants to live in its circumstantial world, the world that it was created. It doesn't want to transcend it. The only hope it knows is the hope for profit. Either he gets the power and all the riches that come from liberation, as it imagines, or the worldly ones. But if any one of these are threatened, then, because this is the character that lives in illusion, is illusion, and paves the way towards illusion. That's its function. So every detail counts. Every details count. It's not just embracing your spiritual path, your level of vision, because some of you have the vision of walking the spiritual path, then abandoning it, going into the worldly path because I'm not suitable for that, blah 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 blah. Then walking some miles in the worldly path and reaching emptiness, and it's the same character that it's reaching emptiness, the same. Then he reaches the same frustration because he is still there, because those small steps weren't given, that work of the end was not made, and it is still greed. The calling may be there, it is there, or else he wouldn't complete no cycle, but greed is still in the front. So it doesn't matter if you do this once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. He just wants to spend his time like that, because there's movement, there's the renewal of hope, there's the desperation, and even if this ends, movement will continue. Movement will continue. And when it reaches this point, it's not getting possible. So when the mind says it's not getting, it's not being possible, it means that it wants to go to the other side again, to explore the other side. This is what it means. Its gains haven't been coming, so he wants to go to the other side. But there's nothing new on the other side also. And it will go in the same direction to the same end result that it went before. But it keeps the movement. It keeps the movement. And the excitement of these opposites of hope, frustration, That's the adrenaline which creates addiction also. Many of these cycles talk about addiction to adrenaline. Talks about a lot of things in different levels. So to understand this, just walking in automatic and you don't even know. You don't even know. So basic points. Whatever you find there, whatever fragilities, attachments, desires, there's a responsibility. Start working them as soon as you see them. And you don't stop that work until it is eliminated. That's how you build a solid foundation. Because earthquakes will come, tornadoes will come, tsunamis will come. Have no doubt about it. When it becomes serious, they will come. And if the foundation is not good, you will fall with it. Not 100% guaranteed, but high chances. So if you're starting now, understand that every positioning that you are taking, every decision that you are making, you should align it with those highest principles. Because if you don't, that will have a price. And the price is always the same: time and suffering. Time and suffering. But at any given time, you can start this. And if you're listening it now, well, take it as your calling for starting it now. It doesn't matter in which part of it. It is always the same. The voice of the mind is that which you put aside. The voice of the heart is that which you embrace. The voice of the mind and the desires of the mind and the decisions of the mind is that which you put aside. With these things, you don't give one step. If that step is important, the heart will say so. If it's not speaking, sometimes people just expect an answer all the time. But silence is an answer also. Silence is an answer also. And either it is for that step to be given, or it's not the time yet. So people expect an immediate answer, but silence is also an answer. And you should align all your steps to the voice of the heart. And knowing that whatever comes from here, that is what you put aside. Because if you have the spiritual calling and you're not answering to the voice of your heart, you are wasting your life. And with time, as worldly expectations reduce, this will become very heavy. Very heavy. There are some of you there that started very early, very early. And still, you have this voice in the back of your mind that says, you're wasting time, you should be doing this, and you're not. And as your time slips through your fingers, this notion will become very heavy, until it becomes unbearable. Time is the most precious gift, and you need it all. Some of you think you have time to spend, but you don't. You don't have time to spend. The mind will never be in agreement with the heart. Never. One goes into one direction, the other goes into an opposite direction. One will win. If the mind wins, knowingly that it has won, it will be suffering an emptiness. If the mind wins by knowing it has lost, but still it is in control, it will be suffering. If the heart wins, the mind will experience the ultimate also. So in the beginning, what's a loss for the mind? It's a win-win for everyone. Your life is a gift. Knowing of something as liberation is a gift. Obstacles you have. If you have these two, and you give all your life, all your time to it, you will be successful. If you're looking for liberation, if you're looking for God, as you give room for this worldly character, you're running away from it also. So many of you get seduced by life, by worldly undertakings. And whatever time you are betting on this, this is your real loss. It's not about results. It may be, if you look at illusion or liberation as a result, okay, of God, the rest shall be added on to you. And this is how life is meaningful. And if your life, 24 hours of it, is not aligned with liberation, if your time is not being spent in holy grounds, in a holy life, a life which is consecrated to God, to access what you already know. Because sometimes it's not about giving steps, also it's about holding your ground and not diving into illusion, but that's a different topic. Your time is the most precious thing you have. And if you know of something which is liberation, if you have heard about it, that is the second blessing. Nothing else is needed. stop wasting your time. Or don't. It's your time. Okay.